Hello and welcome everyone to yet another beautiful and glorious weekly walk today on May 24th, 2023. Hello everyone, nice to see you all. Of course, on behalf of the Conservancy and the Programs Department, today's weekly walk is going to be about the birding season. So if you're a fan of any type of wildlife, or if you've been curious about the arts of birding, the act of birding, then definitely this is going to be a weekly walk for you. It is going to be a little bit different because instead of focusing on some of the park's architecture and landscapes, of course, we're going to be focusing on some of the wildlife, some of the beautiful and glorious birds that we can see all around Central Park. So without further ado, let us get into it. And of course, we have our Zoom housekeeping, where I have my colleagues Carla and Ryan on the back end. If you need to ask a question, use the Q&A feature on the bottom. We also have the chat, which if you would like to turn off or disable the chat, just use the little arrow on the side and make sure you click to not show chat previews. All right, and then we also have our CC Live transcript, which you could also turn off using that little arrow on the side and clicking. But yeah, of course, here at the Conservancy, we always want to make sure we preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life and the enjoyment and well-being of all. And that means all living things, not just us, of course, the wildlife that's all throughout Central Park. So today, essentially, I entered from West 81st Street. That's my preferred way to get into the Ramble. Climbed up to Belvedere Castle, and then we went to the Ramble. And without further ado, let's get into it. So as soon as I started my walk right next to Delacorte Theater, after you enter on 81st Street, I saw a very special sight that I don't normally get to see. And that is, of course, the Conservancy's rustic care team. So essentially, the Conservancy's rustic care team is going to be responsible for all of our rustic architecture that is all around Central Park. And essentially, they're going to be responsible for our rustic fences, our rustic benches, and even some of our rustic gazebos like the Dean Summer House or Comp Cot. So it was really nice to actually get to catch them in the act of working, making sure all of that rustic architecture is well maintained and looking beautiful for all of us to enjoy the park. So shout out to the rustic care team, making it happen, giving the park some character and some nice, interesting architecture. So, and essentially a lot of the times they end up using sometimes black locust trees for this type of architecture. And we're just climbing up to Belvedere Castle. And of course, here we are at the plaza of the castle. This is one of my most favorite ways to enter the Ramble. We have some great views that we can view from the castle, and then we get to appreciate the low elevation of one of our woodlands, and that, of course, is the Ramble. So we are going to just get into it today, and let's just get a reminder on all of our beautiful rules for the Ramble. So the first thing is that there are no trash cans in the Ramble, so you want to discard your trash at Belvedere Castle. At the trash cans there. Also, all dogs must be leashed at all times because we have lots of wildlife running around for your safety and the safety of your animals. Always stay on the designated paths and always walk your bicycle. These are very important rules to make sure that everyone can enjoy the park safely. So just make sure you keep all of those rules in mind whenever you're in any of our woodlands, because all three of our woodlands have the same exact rules. And without further ado, we're going to start our walk for today. We shuffled down the path until we get to our first area where we're going to be seeing and bird watching some birds for today. And that, of course, is going to be Tupelo Meadow. So this is Tupelo Meadow, which you can find right inside of the Ramble with that very famous Tupelo tree. And before we actually get into IDing some bird species, let's get into some very basic tips and tricks. Whenever you are out birding or bird watching, here are some tips and tricks that can definitely help you. So essentially what we have here is a size guide, because when you are birding wherever you are in the world, because of course it's something that you could do wherever you are in the world, you want to make sure that you have a good handle on the birds that are actually around you. So essentially what you want to do is find any birds in your local area that are easily identifiable to you, and essentially have in your mind what size they are. That's going to help you with bird identification, because knowing those certain birds in your area could actually help you eliminate certain birds when you're out birding or bird watching. So for instance, if you see a bird that might be the same size, maybe as a house sparrow, maybe you know to eliminate that bird if you're looking for a specific type of species, or if you know something that is as big as maybe a seagull and you're not looking for seagulls when you are bird watching or birding, maybe you could eliminate that bird when you are actually doing the act and watching all the types of birds in your area. So essentially, when you are out birding, just ask yourself, is it smaller or bigger than a sparrow or a pigeon or whatever bird you have in your mind as your example? And that'll make it easier for you to ID certain types of species of birds when you're out there birding or bird watching. All right, so let's see some type of different birds that we come in contact with today and find out some useful facts about them. So as I was standing in Tupelo Meadow, looking for something, I first started with the ground. That's a great place to start if you're a first-time bird watcher or birder. It's easier to identify birds on the ground than trying to identify birds behind leaves and branches high up in the treetops. I would say that's for more advanced birders. And so you don't get overwhelmed. We're going to start with the ground. And it seems like what I found here was a small to medium-sized bird. And I was able to identify that it was, in fact, an American robin. So I was able to identify that by its very iconic orange-bellied feathers. So these orange feathers on its belly is definitely going to give you a huge hint on that is probably a robin. Its yellow beak, and also the movements that it had on the ground. So after you have ID'd the size of the bird, the next thing you're going to want to look for is behaviors. Certain birds like to feed on the ground, and the American robin is no exception, because the American robin is most known for, of course, eating some tasty worms any chance that it can get. And essentially, also, I got all the pictures of the birds that are on the left or right side of the screen. I got that from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, so shout outs to them. But essentially, they're often foraging for tasty worms on the ground, and they move a little bit slowly, so they're not zooming around on the ground. So seeing that orange belly and seeing its behaviors of it foraging for food on the ground helped me easily identify the fact that it was an American robin. Fun fact is that robins actually feed on different types of things depending on the time of the day. Essentially, they eat more worms in the morning and they eat more fruits later in the day. So usually you're going to see some robins foraging for worms in the morning, and later in the day, you're going to see them looking for some nice, tasty fruits. Also, if they consume honeysuckle, apparently it gives them a intoxicated-like state if they consume too much honeysuckle. So those are some fun facts about American robins. They are native residents here in the park and the greater Northeast area. But yes, let us continue on our walk for today and see exactly what else we can actually find, continue on our journey. Okay, so where I'm going to right now is another very popular, two very popular birding spots, and that is going to be by one of our water bodies. It is way easier to spot birds by the water bodies because of the many behaviors they actually end up doing. But before we get to that, let's just admire some more beautiful rustic architecture, this beautiful rustic bench that you can find all around the Ramble. And I really had to appreciate the plaque that's actually on this rustic bench. It seems like it is a memorial of some sorts, and it says, Harvey and Fiona forever lucky ducks. So I just thought that was beautiful and also very appropriate, of course, since we are doing some birding ourselves today. And with that, let's get to the next stop on our walk. And of course, that's going to be right around the gill, which is one of the water bodies that you can find in the ramble. So here we are by the gill, and essentially, again, going towards water bodies is going to be a great place to go bird watching / birding, because essentially there's a lot of different behaviors these birds can do. And also, if birds are fans of fish or insects, a lot of times, well, fish, of course, going to be in water bodies, but insects are also attracted to standing bodies of water. So lots of birds like to come over there, not only to take a nice bird bath, but also to have some feeding time. So water bodies are a great place to do some birding. And of course, right as I am zooming in my binoculars to see what's on the gill, I see some beautiful ducks, maybe some lucky ducks, and these ducks are going to be known as mallards. So these are some other native residents that you can find all around the greater New York area, as well as all around the Northeast area. And essentially, mallards, the green ones that you see are going to be the males, and the ones that are brown, those are going to be the females. You mostly see them in pairs, groups, or flocks of these ducks. And even though pairing takes place in the fall, you can actually see them mating all season long and having courtship. A fun fact is that the standard duck's quack actually comes from a female mallard, because the male mallards actually don't quack. They make a quieter sound. That's not that iconic quack that we all know. So that's a fun fact, that that sound, that iconic quack that we know, actually comes from female mallards. Yes, and of course, something else about ducks is, although they are birds that can fly, they do have a couple weeks where they're preening and molting their feathers, where they are actually flightless. So they have a couple weeks at the end of breeding season where they're actually flightless and more vulnerable to predators. So that's another fun fact. And let's see what else we can find today on our journey of birding. And as I was looking to the side, right on the opposite side of the gill, the ground right next to it, I did find another bird that's actually a migratory bird just passing through, a visitor, if you will. And this is going to be a gray catbird. So essentially, gray catbirds are really unique because they are related to the mockingbird family. So that means that their calls can actually mimic other calls of other birds and even other animals, which is why it got the name catbird, with its iconic call being similar to a meow or a mew of a cat. So they could actually mimic the sounds of a cat as well as the calls of some other birds all around. So that's something that makes them quite unique. Yes, so they have that copying ability to copy any types of calls that are around them. And essentially, the gray catbird song has a lasting time of about 10 minutes. And normally they are using this song to proclaim their territory. So instead of doing something else to proclaim their territory, they're going to sing that long song to proclaim their territory. And also, these birds are essentially migrating. Something that is really unique about Central Park is that it's on the Great Atlantic Flyway, which is one of the paths that birds take for their migration, either south to north or north to south. And normally we see bird migration taking place during the spring, late April, and all of May, and also in the fall, of course, September. So that's usually when we see migrating birds pass through. So we have this nice and very adorable visitor passing through, a catbird. So maybe the next time when you're walking through Central Park, you could actually spot this catbird for the next couple weeks. All right, so we're going to be continuing on our journey for today. And as I was walking and trotting along this path, I see a stunning little, what I identified as a mourning dove. So we're seeing that this bird is a little bit bigger than the birds that we've seen on the ground at least. So that made me easily identify the fact that this is actually a mourning dove. No, not a pigeon. Because a lot of times people end up mistaking these beautiful mourning doves as pigeons. I like to call them the supermodels of the pigeon world, with their little slender bodies and their long tails with little speckles of black all along their feathers. So essentially, this is one of the most common birds you can actually see in North America, with a population of over 300 million. But something really unique about them is that they have a very soft and soothing call, a coo, if you will. And even though they're similar size to pigeon, they have long, slender wings and long, slender tails, which can make it a little easier to identify these birds versus pigeons. You can see this long, slender tail at the back there. That'll definitely be a good identifier when you're out looking for these kinds of birds. The fact is that mourning doves eat essentially 12% to 20% of their body weight per day. What they do is they'll consume a bunch of seeds or whatever type of food they actually find on the ground, but they will actually end up digesting those seeds much later. So I will say it's kind of similar to a chipmunk or a hamster that maybe stores their food in their cheeks. But mourning doves do something similar where they first just consume the food and then they digest it later when they are in a safe spot where they are no longer vulnerable, because these birds also do like to ground feed. They store it in a place in their esophagus called the crop. So that's essentially where they're storing anything that they may find on the ground that they feel like eating, and they're gonna save it for later for digestion. Alrighty, and right a little bit next to the mourning dove, I see this black bird that shimmers in the sunlight so nicely, as we're seeing right here. And I was able to find out that this bird right here, shimmering in the sunlight, appearing all black, is actually a common grackle. It's one of my favorite birds to stumble upon when I am birding. And essentially, a common grackle is very unique due to its unique feathers, giving it, even though it appears black in the shadows, it gives the sunlight will give the feathers a more iridescent glow that makes the feathers shimmer into different hues of green and purple, as we can see in this photo here. So I really enjoy seeing these birds just because they look so stunning in the sunlight. But fun fact is that they have a call that is very similar to a rusty sounding gate. It's actually quite loud of a call. And one of their favorite things to eat is corn. So they're a huge threat to lots of farms with corn, but similarly to crows, you can scare them away with the scarecrow. If you have one, so they don't get into all those different and tasty corn crops. But essentially, common grackles are omnivorous and will eat almost anything. So that's another fun fact about them. So although it just looks like your common blackbird, this is actually a common grackle. And this is also going to be a native resident here in New York, staying all year round, but it's always nice to see them all around Central Park. And we're going to be continuing a little bit more down the path besides the gill to see what else exactly we could find. I saw these beautiful, stunning flowers as I knelt beside the path. You always have time to stop and smell the flowers whenever you're in Central Park. And I found out that these are called wild geranium. These wild geranium has this very cute lilac type of tone to their flower petals. And I just think that's the thing that stood out to me the most when I was on my birding excursion. So shout out to all the different wildflowers that you can encounter all around Central Park. And a very good reminder, as much as we love our wildlife and especially the birds, please do not ever feed the wildlife. You are actually having a detriment to their health and also their hunting skills. There are certain things like bread that are very detrimental to birds' health because you will not find white bread in the wild anywhere, and it actually has a lot of sugars and things like that that the birds don't need. And again, it's very detrimental to their health. So as much as we love birds and birding, please do not feed the wildlife. You are doing them a disservice, and you are also calling into questions people's safety. So please keep that in mind whenever you are visiting Central Park. And as I trotted up this path, I saw this very tiny, adorable, cute looking bird right here. We can see that it's way smaller than a pigeon. So that definitely helped us eliminate that. And it's even smaller than a house sparrow. So upon closer inspection, you see this adorable looking bird, and we actually found out that it is an ovenbird. Yes, so actually similarly, we can see from this picture to this picture, the white feathers on the belly looking very similar in pattern. So that is something that could help you ID this bird with the seemingly white feathers on the belly, but we also have some black stripes throughout these white feathers on the belly of this ovenbird, which is going to be a migratory bird that is a nice visitor stopping by on its long trip of migration. So we see the black stripes on its belly, a little mohawk looking type feather situation on the top of the head, and also, of course, these tiny little stick legs. So these are some things that could definitely help you identify this bird when you are out birding. Yes. So very cute little ovenbird that we got to see. A nice little visitor on its migration. So happy that I got to catch this little ovenbird, and hopefully you will get to see adorable birds such as this on your next visit in the future. Alrighty, we're going to be continuing more down the path. We're leaving the gill now. And just a little reminder to help us navigate through the ramble. If you are ever confused on where you are in Central Park, please look to these lampposts, which essentially has the first two numbers being the closest cross streets. And right now that's going to be 75th Street for us. And the last two numbers essentially telling you if you're on the east or west. Even numbers on the end means you're on the east side, and odd numbers means you're on the west side. So now I know that I am very close to East 75th Street, according to this lamppost. So definitely use it on your travels throughout the park. All right, so we are on about the last leg of our walk for today. Let's see what else we could run into and find on our beautiful birding walk. And instead of looking to the ground, like I have been for most of this time, again, it's really friendly to first-time birders to look to the ground. I was brave and actually looked up to the treetops, to the tree canopies, because birds end up foraging in three different sections, on the ground, mid-canopy of the trees, or the top canopy of the trees. So up on the top, we see a nice residence, a nice year-round resident that I'm sure a lot of us are very familiar with. And if you're more comfortable as you're birding outside, if you're very new to this, definitely try looking to the trees, even though it does get a little bit harder to identify them. But I could easily identify this native resident because of this red color, this red feathers that I'm seeing here. So of course, this bird is none other than a northern cardinal. So that's going to be a native resident here all over New York and much of the Northeast, of course. And it's going to be characterized by this very iconic red feathers that you're going to see all over the male birds. So another fun fact for birds in general, in case you're not familiar, is most of the time, the male birds are going to have the more intricate colors and the more intricate feathered patterns. And essentially, that's going to be because the males are the ones that have to attract a mate. So they got to look even more flashy to attract all those female birds to be able to make some bird babies. So most of the time, if you see the really brightly colored birds, most likely that's going to be a male. And of course, we identified that this is a male cardinal with that iconic red feathers. a little type of taller mohawk on the top of its head, and of course that orange, thick, stocky beak. So these are just some identifiers you could use when looking for, of course, the northern cardinal that's going to be a resident here all year round. So fun fact, only few female North American cardinals actually sing, and most of the singing comes from the males. And essentially, female cardinals also, they look quite different. They have a similar structure. They're going to have a mohawk also, but they're going to be brown. So the feathers are going to look more of a tannish brown color, but they are still going to have that iconic orange and stocky beak with the black band around the beak, another good identifier. So essentially, if you're seeing a tan bird with a very similar structure, that's just going to be a female cardinal, not a completely different species of bird. And of course, if you see the red iconic feathers with the huge hairstyle on the top sticking out, that is going to be a male northern cardinal. Always happy to see them. There are lots of lore about cardinals being good luck and such. So hopefully you'll have good luck next time you're out visiting the park. All right, so we're going to be heading to a really nice scenic spot in the Ramble I often like to go to, and this is going to be called the Oven. And one of the reasons why I really love this spot in the Ramble is because you could truly appreciate the different landscapes that Central Park has to offer. So as we can see here in this picture, right now we're in the Ramble, one of the park's landscapes being a woodland. Then we get to see the lake, a water body, which is another type of landscape. And then the last thing we could actually make out pretty easily in the park is going to be none other than Bethesda Terrace. And of course, that's going to be the formal section of Central Park. That's a different type of landscape to behold. So if you're in the Ramble, definitely check out the Oven, this little area where you can observe all these three different landscapes touching each other, and we can observe their beauty and maybe even people watch. So it definitely helps me appreciate the designs of the park that it has to offer, and also all the different landscapes that the park has to offer as well. And it just looks like something out of a painting is something else I would like to say, because lots of different paintings in Central Park also similarly show all the different landscapes that we could find. And I happened to see some house sparrows dust bathing right next to me as I was in the Oven. And essentially, dust bathing is going to be a behavior that certain birds do, such as these house sparrows, essentially to keep bugs off of them. So to keep the bugs and to wash them off of them, they're going to use this dust to make sure that all their feathers are bug-free. So they're going to roll around in the dirt. They're going to use their wings to flap some dirt onto them. And again, that's just to make sure no harmful insects are actually sticking to their feathers. Such, it could definitely help them avoid ticks as well. All right, so we are coming to the last glimpses of our walk. I caught some beautiful azaleas on the side. I found out azaleas actually come out in many different colors. So there are white azaleas, there are orange ones as well. That was really nice. I caught this right at the side of the Oven. And I got a closer look at Bethesda Terrace, the also beautiful formal section of Central Park, with the juxtaposition of those skyscrapers in the background. Always a nice view to see. And at the end of my walk, I caught a glimpse of this beautiful rock with many different types of wildlife, such as some turtles that are sunning on the rock, as well as some Canadian geese. And to end off our walk for today, we essentially have our last bird, which we actually saw a robin feeding its baby birds in the nest. So just make sure if you do see such an amazing sight, you keep your distance away from birds from their nests, because they could actually get quite territorial and they could fly down towards you and actually try and attack you if you get too close, if they feel like you are threatening their babies in the nest. So just make sure you always keep a respectful distance from any wildlife that you encounter here in the park. And with that, we have a beautiful and stunning view of bow bridge to end off our walk. So I would just like to encourage anybody who hasn't been birding before to definitely try it out. And we also have some programs to offer you. Some programs to offer you, those of you who have never been birding before or have been interested in birding but haven't taken the plunge to do it quite yet. We have 2 tours that we're offering. One, these are for birding beginners, of course. Tomorrow we have birding basics. That's going to take place in the Ramble at 9 a.m. My colleagues are sending a link in the chat right now for that tour. And we also have a special edition of our birding basics tour that's going to be honoring Black Birders Week. So essentially, we are asking folks of color, if you know folks of color that are interested in birding or maybe have never tried birding before, if you know some young people who are interested in wildlife and have never heard of birding before, maybe you're in an organization that supports different communities of color, I would like you to forward them this information right here for our program that we're going to be having on Saturday. It's a very special program where we're having a collaboration with a consultant. Her name is Indigo, who is an avid birder and who's also been a consultant for Brooklyn Botanical Gardens in her birding excursions. So I'm going to be co-facilitating this walk with Carla and our outside consultant to talk more about birding and what it means to be a birder as a person of color. So if you are willing to listen and learn the people's experiences of color who have been birding or who haven't tried birding for whatever reason, and if you are a new birder who is willing to get into such conversations about race and about Black Birders Week in general, what that is and what that means, then please come on our Black Birders Week edition of our Birding Basics program. And that's going to be this Saturday, May 26th. And again, you could pass on this information to the folks who should get it, which again is going to be people of color and also new birders or new people who really enjoy wildlife and etc. So if you could forward that information to said parties, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much again for always supporting us here at the programs department every week with these weekly walks and all of our different in-person programs as well. Thank you for supporting us at the Conservancy. And again, I would like for all of you to stay safe and be well, of course. And we will see you next week with some more amazing weekly walk programming. So bye-bye for now.